Well, good afternoon, good morning, whatever. How are you all today? And welcome to American Revival, the renamed American Reversion. Why did I do that? And I haven't been on here for a while, and I'll kind of tell you why. I've been watching all this stuff going politically. I started, by the way, are you tired of winning yet? No, me neither. It's been something, hadn't it, the last few weeks? um, I hadn't been on here because everybody else was talking about everything, and I just kind of wanted to wait and see exactly what was going to happen. I'm not one of those who every day says, "Well, I think this is going to happen, and I think that's going to happen, and we will just see." But enough has happened now to give me a kind of a history, and I feel more confident that the direction we're going is the direction that we want to go. So I decided, I named the channel to begin with after my first book, The Reversion, American Reversion, saying that it needs to go back to the way that it used to be. But we are going through a revival here, and we have the right leader. And I said for so long, even during the wilderness years of Biden, that there was not going to be a reversion or a revival or a turnaround until enough people were upset at the same thing at the same time, and and that there was a national leader and there was a martyr. Those are the three things necessary for any great turnaround. And in Trump, we have it all, and everybody turned out and they actually did the job. And it was the American people. I want to send out a message to a lot of the American people and to other people around the world who may not understand Americans. And it's understandable that you may not understand Americans because of the kind of Americans you have been familiar with. You've become familiar with weak Americans, with whiny Americans, with crybaby Americans, with victimhood Americans, with the kind of Americans who essentially hate America. And for people in other countries who also want to hate America, they found good soil into which they're dropped their seeds of hate. But you all have recently seen that that's not the real Americans. Most real Americans, we're kind of quiet. We don't rise up. We have jobs to go to. We're not the protesters. We're not the ones who are butthurt about everything, are going to whine and cry if we don't get our way. We go to work and we built this country. And actually, we built and rebuilt most of the rest of the world. So you're welcome. I'm sure that you are thanking us right now, right? You should. I know I'm gonna be a little honest here with this stuff. Did you see? And I'll start with this. Did you see the Canadian hockey team get their butts whipped? Now, to our Canuck friends, this isn't personal. It's not against you. But this is something that the world needs to see and to understand. America and Americans were kind of quiet for a while, but when we decide not to be quiet anymore, look out. So the Canadians decided, because of what Trump has said about, by the way, make America great again, and Canada if you'd like to, because you know how he's been taunting Trudeau up there and calling Canada the 51st state and all. I get it. That's kind of insulting. You're proud of your country. It's a beautiful country. Probably the closest country to the United States that there is in the world, but you're still not the United States. And and so when there was a game and the crowd booed the American national anthem, oh my, was that a mistake? No, that's rude, and Americans don't take to that, and then did you see the game? And the American team went after that Canadian team and whooped their butts. And I don't just mean by a score, was it 3-1? But I mean kicked their asses on the ice. Let me put a lesson out there. Do not piss off Americans. This isn't a challenge. It's not a threat. It's a statement. And I think this needs to be said because it hasn't been seen for so long. You have to remember that America is or the United States is the country that went over and saved Europe's ass after the First World War. And I have feelings about that. We never should have gone over. We never should have been involved in that war. But we did, and if we hadn't, Europe would have gone down in the ditch. And America or the United States went back over and saved Europe's butt in World War II. And if we hadn't, and I don't think we should have been in that one either, Europe's problems should be Europe's problems. You know why? Because whenever we do that, whenever we go around the world and we help countries, and we save countries, we save whole continents. We saved Europe. It doesn't take long after we send them billions of dollars and rebuild their entire countries through the Marshall Plan and everything else, for them to all of a sudden forget that we saved their sorry butts and start acting as if they are superior to us again. Interesting. You know, I've had, well, I won't get in. Maybe I'll do. I was going to tell you about the times that I've been insulted by Europeans in my own home, but I'll hold off. And they think they're so right. But here's the lesson, guys. And here's a lesson that the left in the United States learned, and they learned big time. Do not piss off Americans. Once like I say, we'll lie low, we'll take it. We have things to do, we have jobs to work, we have families to raise and support, and we'll put up with a lot. But there's a point beyond which you best not go. And the left learned that lesson here in the United States at the elections. And the Canadian hockey team learned that up there. Do not piss off Americans. Do not piss off America. I will tell you that there's probably no more warlike people in the world than Americans. Simple as that. Did you hear then also, did you see, and I'm loving it. I love what's going on there. Let me put on my peepers here. I'm going to read you something out of my second book, The Revival, that kind of describes what's happened with America, and we're going back. But there was a study came out that said liberal women 18 to 40 are the most unhappy group. Big surprise, right? Did you know that they're far more unhappy than conservative women? That's because they think of themselves as victims, and what victim is happy, right? Did you see Trump go out there and lead the Daytona 500 in the Beast? Who else would do that? This guy is an amazing leader. He ought to go out and take a tour of the Gulf of America in one of our aircraft carriers, or maybe several of our aircraft carriers. They could just make a little tour around the Gulf of America and remind everybody who provides the safety for everybody. Now, I know there's a lot of things that America has done, and I'm not apologizing. I mean, I'm not justifying everything that the United States has done. I think we've done a number of things wrong. I think we ought to keep our nose out of other people's business. I think we ought to keep our money at home. I think we ought to quit shipping our jobs and our industry, our manufacturing overseas. I think we ought to be the strong country that we are, that everybody else essentially depends on. But we ought to always keep it in front of, in front of their recognition that we are the ones who come to help when people need help. What else we got up there? Oh yeah, the hockey fight. I love that. The beast going around. Liberal women are unhappy. I want to read you something from my second book, The Revival. And some of you know, if you've read the Stonemont series, my series. Do I have it here? I have all the books here. But my series, the Stonemont series, let me hold the whole thing up for you so you'll understand what it is. It's a series about the collapse of everything in the world as a result of a CME. The reversion, the revival, the renewal, an appeal to heaven, the blessings of freedom, hostages to fortune, and the latest one, On Wings Like Eagles. It's about a world-killing CME that takes everything back, and how one prepared American family, as a result of their preparedness, is able to continue living a good life themselves while also helping others, and they then rebuilding a society that's worth a darn and worth living in. Not like the one that we have been living in the United States for some time, with all the DEI crap and the victimization and the attacks against Christians and white males, white people totally, to be honest, but especially white straight Christian males. Okay, so boo-hoo, I'm such a victim, right? I fall into all of those categories. Why don't I feel sorry for myself? Same reason that all the other guys who share all those attributes with me don't, because we're the ones that essentially built the world. How about that? Raise your hand if that offends you. Not many. Oh, there's one back there. If that offends you, you need to take a look. Take a look at this world, and take a look at everything that's been built and invented. And I don't care whether it's in building, in manufacturing, in medicine, in science, in in music, in the arts, whatever. You will see essentially a European oriented, a white. This isn't a racial thing. This is truth. Okay, it's about time people are willing to accept truth. A European foundation doesn't mean that other civilizations didn't have something of that case. Nobody measured up to the European, essentially European Mediterranean cultures and civilizations, and those people who decided that they couldn't live under the boot of what many of the European countries became, the authoritarianism and all that, by both the church and political powers. They came over to America, and then they built the greatest country that has ever been. Let me repeat that for people who didn't like to hear that. Let me repeat it for people who did like to hear it, because you don't hear it often enough. The greatest country there has ever been. And the country who has helped other countries and other people more than any country that has ever been. And then something happened in the mid-1900s that our country started going down, and we started rewarding people essentially who wouldn't work. We started kind of criticizing those who were responsible for the building. Right? I'm going to read this. It's in the second book, and what the scene is here, and y'all I think are going to like this. The scene is that they are sitting down. They have survived the first year after the collapse. They've built a town hall. They've brought in a lot of people from around to help them, who otherwise would have been starving, much like America has done. They brought in a lot of people that would have been starving and wouldn't be able to survive without Stonemont. And so Jim Wyatt, the patriarch of Stonemont, is standing up, and he's talking to the crowd who've gathered there. They have the whole feast laid out, right? Everything they've brought in. They've killed pigs and cows and chickens and everything. They've brought them all in. And they're going to have a big feast, and they have invited everybody in, kind of like America does. Okay. And he's talking to them. And this first part, actually, the first part that you'll hear when he's reading some old family history, I took that directly of a family history of mine. And I found this in a journal. Now, a lot of my family came in, during the 1630s, others in the 1730s, others in the 1840s during the famine in Ireland. But the basic ones came in the 1630s and then 1730s. Okay, so I'll set the scene for you. So the whole place, the whole hall is full. Big long tables. Just imagine, candlelight, fireplaces, the tables, groaning under the weight of roast turkeys and chickens and sides of beef and everything like that. Okay. He stood quietly, that's Jim Wyatt, as he waited for the room to see him in calm to near silence, then reached into his pocket and withdrew the slip of paper on which he had copied some lines from the green folder in his den. He had taken a moment to scan the hall, looking at the faces turned toward him and thinking of what each of them had gone through in the preceding months. Then he began. Let me stop right here, too, and I want to say something to a lot of Americans who don't really understand this, and a lot of people around the world who don't understand it. You've heard that America is a country of immigrants. Wrong. Absolutely wrong. And you've heard that immigrants built this country. You've also heard that slaves built the country. That's not true. And to an extent, immigrants did help build the country, the Irish on the east and the Chinese on the west with the railroads or what. It was the Irish that drained the swamps of New Orleans. You know why? Because slaves were too valuable, because so many of them died from malaria and gators and snake bite and such as that they didn't want to risk their slaves for whom they had paid, money. But you could hire an Irishman for 50 cents a week to go down there and drain those swamps. So yeah, to an extent, there were later on immigrants who helped build this country. But it's not. America was not a country of immigrants. It was a country of settlers and conquerors. Okay? You hear the story about, you live on stolen land. Well, wherever you live, so do you. Okay? So I don't give that, and that's a stupid argument. Okay, we came over, the people came over from Europe. They found indigenous people, the Indians, and did you know that they call themselves Indians? They don't call themselves Native Americans, except for those who want to act like victims and be, lead protests and things. No, they found Indian tribes. Some they fought, some they were friends with. The Indian tribes themselves were wiping each other out, enslaving each other. It wasn't like they were over here chasing butterflies and buffalo before the white man came, and they really never developed anything. I mean, the Europeans came to a pretty much a vacant, empty land populated by a Stone Age culture. And by what I mean by that, they had never invented the wheel. They had never invented a written language. They were still making arrowheads out of chipping stones. Okay, that is a Stone Age culture. It's not an advanced civilization. So the Europeans didn't come over and steal the land. They tried to settle the land. When they were attacked, they fought back, and because they were better fighters, they conquered the land. So America is not a stolen land; it's a conquered land. And Americans, for the most part, we didn't slaughter everybody like many other cultures have done. We didn't kill everybody. I'll get into that on a different time. So that was an aside that I wanted to get in there and make very plain. And I want to make this clearer for people around the world who may be watching this. You want to peek into the real America? I'm gonna talk about that a little bit on this channel, because America is being revived. We're going through a revival under Donald Trump, and I think you're going to see some of the old America come back. Okay, so here he says, I was reading through some of our old family history earlier today and came across a passage describing one of our branches who came from Switzerland and settled in Virginia during the early 1700s. That really is about my family. It struck me that our time is in many ways similar. I think you'll see the relevance. He then put on his glasses and began to read. And this, what I'm reading here, is directly out of what I took from one of our family's journals, who was written back in the 1600s. Or 1700s on this one. At that time, this is running out of the journal, at that time, this section was a wilderness. Deer roamed through the forests, and the streams abounded in fish, ducks, and geese. Wild and dangerous beasts were plentiful. They were schooled in the hardships of pioneer times. Remember, I said they were pioneers. They weren't land robbers, they were pioneers and settlers. They felled the giant oak and erected their log cabin in the wild woodlands. They preferred such environment in a land dedicated to religious and political freedom rather than to suffer persecution in their native lands. Those native lands were Europe, the European countries that had persecuted people because of their political and religious beliefs. He had paused, taking off his glasses, and surveyed the silent faces looking back at him. We are now in a new wilderness, and dangerous beasts are again plentiful, though most of them are two-legged. That's the truth. We are becoming schooled in a new kind of pioneer life, and we felled the trees to build our cabins. But more than any of that, we can see the greatest parallel in their preference to live their lives in a land dedicated to religious and political freedom rather than to suffer under persecution in what their native countries had become. The European countries that were faltering. The hall remained quiet, and he continued. Many of us have said that the country we grew up in had ceased to exist long before the collapse. The America that valued liberty, virtue, morality, hard work, and self-reliance had devolved into a semi-socialist state of coddled, dependent, incompetent, politically correct crybabies who were offended by anything with which they disagreed, and who, by their sheer numbers and political influence, were able to stifle and control the producing class, which had done most of the work to support them, consequently driving our once great country into a chaotic decline. That's what happened under the left, under the Democrat Party, and under more liberal Republican administrations to our country. And the right was too busy working. They didn't stand up as a whole to resist it. He had paused for a moment, noting the many who nodded in affirmation of what he had said, then continued. The collapse returned us to a reset point, and I'm talking, we're at a reset point now, a point from which it may be possible to rebuild the America we once knew. And you're seeing through Donald Trump and what he's doing with the deep state and through Doge, some of that. Whether we will be able to do this will depend on a number of things, some of which will be beyond our control, but we must concentrate on and dedicate our efforts to those areas over which we do have control. We must build the future we want our children to live in. Patrick Henry said that virtue, morality, and religion are the great pillars of government, and were the armor that made our country invincible in its early days. John Adams said that the U.S. Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people, and that it was wholly inadequate for the government of any other. There can be no argument that those pillars cracked and crumbled in later years, or that the moral and religious underpinnings of our country dissolved in a culture increasingly consumed with self and celebrity worship. As Abraham Lincoln, Douglas MacArthur, and many others warned us, the nation which could not be defeated from without was eventually weakened and defeated from within. That's what happened to the United States. It started happening, well, one could make an argument anytime from the mid-60s back through the mid-50s back through the 20s. But that's essentially what happened to the United States. And there has been a sleeping giant within the United States, the normal American, the hard-working American, the tough American, the non-whining, non-victimized American that has been sick and tired of it and has been waiting for the time to rise up, and that's what you're seeing now. That's what you're seeing. You look at the speech given by J.D. Vance over in the European security, whatever it was. The German chancellor, prime minister, whatever he was, cried. And a lot of the European leaders I know weren't very happy. Good, tough, I don't care. We rebuilt your countries. Your countries would have been rubble had we not come over there and saved you. And then rebuilt your countries. And what do we get for it? Thank you? No. Not really. Well, America is coming back. I'll also say something to those Americans who, I'll say two groups. You Americans who are so far on the left, you're a bunch of commies. You're the ones who caused the problems, but you're not the only ones. There's another large segment who claimed that they were patriots and all that who wouldn't vote because they got to thinking that they start spreading these ideas. Well, voting doesn't matter and it's all crooked. Yeah, there's a lot of corruption in politics. That's because so many people were too lazy to be a part of it. You are seeing the process by which corruption is being rooted out of our government. And it was essentially being done by one man who stood up against things that most people would have crumbled under. I'm not saying that I'm sure I could have stood up against. I know we would all like to say, I'd stand up no matter what. You know what this guy went through? And for all the idiots out there who will say, well, he's part of the plan. He's just doing this because he's all part of the plan. He's the Club of Rome or something like that. Fools. One guy, he loves America. He is an ass kicker. And he is showing what the American spirit is supposed to be. And a lot of people out here still have it. And a lot of them are rising up because of it. Let me take one more sip out of this wonderful mug that you could buy if you'd like off our website, stonemont.us. And coffee or whatever tastes much better out of this. I think we're witnessing the revival of America, American revival. I think it's going to be interesting to watch. I think it's going to be fun to watch. I think that we have to re-educate a lot of people as to what true American values are. And we have to re-educate a lot of the world as to what true American values are, because too many of them have just thought that American values meant that they can take advantage of us and we're just going to give them a whole bunch of money. And of course that was just a slush fund for the CIA and the Democrats. Oh yeah, you hate us, you do things, you talk bad about us. Here's $1 billion, here's $5 billion. As far as I'm concerned, any country, any person that says the slightest negative thing about America should be cut off. Totally. Why should we be supporting anything that anyone out there who does not support us 100% do or say? Anyway, I've been waiting for this, and I think it's great. I am happy to live again in an America that resembles the one I grew up in. America of strength, and an America who cares about its own citizens. And if those of you who aren't on that page, You're the problem. We know it now. I would take a real look inside myself and maybe do a little audit and say, this victimization may not be doing the job anymore for me, whether I'm a person or a country. Maybe I ought to grow up. All right? Hey, America needed a reversion. America has a revival. I hope it's going to be fun. You all have a good night. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.